Sidney Dekker, in Just Culture Balancing Safety and Accountability, said, "A just culture is not the absence of accountability, it is the presence of trust." The single most common objection to blameless investigation is that it removes consequences, that without blame, people will stop caring, that accountability disappears. It is a reasonable concern and it is wrong. Blameless does not mean careless. It does not mean consequence-free. It means the investigation process is protected from punishment so that learning can occur. What happens after the learning is a separate decision entirely. Sidney Dekker's Just Culture framework gives organizations the structure to hold both truths at once, that most failures are produced by systems, and that individual conduct still matters. Traditional accountability in most organizations works like this. If something goes wrong, an investigation finds the person closest to the failure, that person receives a consequence, retraining, a write-up, or termination. The assumption is straightforward. If the person had done the right thing, the failure would not have occurred. Therefore, the person is the cause. Therefore, the person should be held accountable. The problem is that this model treats all failures the same. A nurse who administers the wrong medication because two drugs have nearly identical packaging receives the same response as a nurse who administers the wrong medication after knowingly skipping verification steps. One is a system design problem, the other is a conduct problem. Traditional accountability cannot distinguish between them. When organizations treat every failure as a conduct problem, two things happen. People stop reporting errors, and the system conditions that produce errors remain invisible. Dekker's Just Culture model distinguishes three categories of behavior, each requiring a fundamentally different organizational response. Human error consists of honest mistakes, slips, lapses, and misjudgments made by people acting in good faith within the conditions the organization created. The appropriate response is to console the individual and fix the system. Punishment here suppresses reporting without improving safety. At-risk behavior occurs when a person knowingly deviates from a procedure, but the deviation has become routine or normalized. The person is not actually acting maliciously, they're responding to incentives, pressures, or norms that make the shortcut feel reasonable. The appropriate response is coaching and system redesign, remove the conditions that reward or tolerate the drift. In another course, I talk a lot about what conditions are causing your employees to create workarounds. In that case, mostly talking about shadow IT as a technology, but it's the same basic concept. Usually, if system processes are being worked around or ignored, there's a reason why it's become the norm. Reckless conduct is a conscious, unjustifiable disregard for a substantial and known risk. The individual knew the risk, chose to ignore it without any reasonable justification. This category is more rare, and that rarity is critical. Disciplinary action is appropriate here, but only here. Without these distinctions, organizations default to a binary choice, punish or do nothing. Leaders who fear appearing weak choose punishment. Every failure becomes a conduct issue regardless of context. The system is never examined. Leaders who fear being unfair choose inaction. They sense that blame is wrong but lack a framework for responding differently. In that case, accountability erodes, not because blameless practices failed, but because no structure existed for what follows learning. Just culture breaks this binary. It provides a defensible way to match the response to the behavior. Console for error, coach for drift, discipline for recklessness. The first step, though, is always investigation. Before behavior can be categorized, the conditions must be understood. This is why investigations must be blameless. Fear contaminates the information required to classify behavior accurately. Dekker's substitution test is a practical tool. Would a similarly trained, similarly experienced person in the same situation with the same information likely have acted the same way? And if yes, the issue is systemic, not individual. Next, examine normalization. Was the behavior known, tolerated, or implicitly rewarded? Did supervisors observe it? Did the organization benefit from it? If so, the organization co-created the behavior and shares responsibility for the outcome. Only when behavior reflects a conscious, unjustifiable choice outside any reasonable interpretation of the role does discipline become the appropriate primary response. Even then, system conditions still have to be examined. Just culture works because it produces trust, and trust produces data. When people trust that honest mistakes will be met with support, they report errors. When they trust that shortcuts will be met with coaching, they disclose drift. And when they trust the process, they participate fully. The result, not softness, it's visibility into risk, system weaknesses, and opportunities for improvement that were previously hidden. Accountability without blame is not a contradiction, it is a discipline. Console for error, coach for drift, discipline for recklessness. Investigate every failure for what the system allowed. You might end up having issues with the system and a reckless employee, but you wouldn't know that unless you do the investigation. Just culture does not remove consequences. It ensures the consequences fit the behavior and that the organization learns every time. Continuous improvement.